We've talked about 4 cases. You know, we've had the initial case with Alvin Bragg in New York. We've had the cases with the special counsel around January 6th, the documents. Where does this rank in seriousness?
Okay, in my book, Get Trump, I go through each of the 4 charges, and I show the New York is the weakest. The strongest is Florida, although the case itself is based on possession of classified material, which is not as big a deal as trying to overturn an election. So the strongest case on the facts is Florida.
Mm-hmm.
The weakest case, both in facts and law, is New York. And the Washington, D.C. case and Fulton County cases are very similar. They both allege election fraud, and I think they both require specific intent on the part of Donald Trump and the other defendants, specific knowledge, subjective knowledge that the election was in fact not stolen. And I think in both cases, it's going to be hard to prove it. Now, it'll be easier in D.C. in front of a jury that's 95% voters voting against Trump. A little more difficult in Georgia, where it was basically 3-1,
Mm-hmm.
not 20-1. So the realities of where the case is being tried may certainly have an impact on the outcome, at trial at least.
So now that we have all 4 indictments in place, what are the next strategies for the president? He's currently on the campaign trail. He also faces, I know, some civil, cases that are still ongoing. Should he just ignore it at this point, let his lawyers do what they do and get on with campaigning, or should he be careful?
Can't do that, because he has to be personally at the trial. It's a criminal trial, not a civil trial.
Yep.
You can have your lawyers represent you. So he's going to have to be in court during many of the days that he wants to be on the campaign trail. If the schedule is what the prosecutors want it to be, he'll be on trial in January in Washington, D.C., in February and March in Georgia, in May in the other places, New York, maybe June or July. So the entire campaign season will be taken up by him being in court. Now, that may not be intended as election interference, but the effect is election interference.
Although the poll numbers seem to go up, so that's not doesn't seem to be impacting
poll numbers among Republicans seem to go up among his supporters. Whether they go up among independent voters, general voters, that remains to be seen. But that's a factor. But the important thing is what precedent this sets for how to challenge elections. Remember, you're supposed to challenge elections by coming up with alternate slates of electors, by going to court. We don't want people challenging elections in the streets. We don't want people doing what they did in Ecuador, shooting the candidate they don't approve of. No, we want them to do exactly what was done in Bush versus Gore and Thomas Jefferson's election, Tilden versus Hayes, the Kennedy election. You go to court. You propose alternate slates of electors. You lobby people who are in the state structures. That's what was charged here. I mean, just imagine, what if it turned out, I'm not saying it did, I don't believe it did, but what if it turned out Trump was right and the election in Georgia was fraudulent? We'd be applauding him for doing exactly what he's been indicted for. And if he believed it was right, you have to look at the case through his eyes, through his mind, not through the mind of the prosecutors or even you or me.
Let me just ask, through your eyes right now, do you feel like President Trump did anything wrong in these cases that we're talking about? Anything?
I think he did a lot wrong.
Criminally wrong, then? Culpable?
I think he did a lot wrong. I think he should have conceded the election. He shouldn't have made the speech of January 6th. He shouldn't have gotten all these lawsuits filed. He shouldn't have had alternate slate of electors. But not a single one of them, in my view, is criminal.
Okay.
There's an enormous difference between doing wrong. That's why I'm not going to vote for him.
I feel
because
it's only
he did wrong, but that's not criminal.
I